The lightsaber is the weapon of the Jedi, a tool not expressly for the purpose of bringing harm, but for policing stability. With a steady hand, the lightsaber becomes a badge of authority for the guardians of peace and justice among the stars. But there was a time when the lightsaber carried a bit of a stigma around it, and in that time, there was a Jedi Grandmaster who came to despise the weapon. So much so that the Grandmaster refused to carry a lightsaber herself. Greetings lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. In today's holocron, we are going to discuss Fay Coven, the Jedi Grandmaster directly before Yoda, and arguably one of the most influential leaders of the Jedi in their entire history, and it all centered around her refusal to carry the Jedi's weapon, the lightsaber. So let's begin. Fay Coven was a female genetic Jedi Master, a humanoid rodent-like species. Having been born in the year 1040 BBY, she was a Jedi Master during the Light and Darkness War of 1010 BBY. This time period is incredibly important to understanding why Master Fay Coven took the stance that she did against the lightsaber, not only about the weapon itself, but about the Jedi as a whole during this time. The Light and Darkness War was the final entry in the 1,000-year-long cluster of conflicts known as the New Sith Wars. This time period served as the last great stress test of the Republic and the twilight of the Sith. The name of this war comes from the Brotherhood of Darkness and the Army of Light, those who battled for 10 long years. The fallen Jedi turned Sith Skir Khan had managed to unite the scattered factions of Sith Lords. For 1,000 years, they had gone to war with the Jedi only for their efforts to be dissolved due to infighting. The Sith could not help but destroy themselves from within. Seeking to amend this, Lord Khan brought together what he called the Brotherhood of Darkness, a system wherein all Sith Lords treated each other as equals, with no Dark Lord to rule over any of them. As a symbol of their camaraderie, they threw away the title of Darth, which was a moniker of supremacy, one that naturally incited challenge. Rising against them was Jedi General Hoth, who gathered a coalition of the so-called Jedi Lords of this day. The Jedi Lords held independent power from the wider Jedi Order, and they forged what is known as the Army of Light in order to defeat the Sith. However, around this time, the Jedi and the galaxy as a whole were utterly exhausted from all of the wars. They had suffered hundreds of years of non-stop conflict, with the New Sith Wars being particularly agonizing. Because of this, the Army of Light found itself in a unique position of struggling for reinforcements. Very few Jedi wanted to join the war, and some even protested the army outright, stating that it was only drawing the Jedi further into the dark side. And although she isn't explicitly named in this era, we can imagine that Fay Coven was in this camp, championing peace above all, even if that meant striking a live and let live with the Sith. But Lord Hoth was unwilling to bargain, and he pursued the Sith with all of his power around the galaxy. The Light and Darkness War was basically even between the two factions, resulting in both of them throwing an all-or-nothing attack at one another. This led to the now infamous Ruusan campaign, the final battle of the 1,000-year war. On the mid-rim world of Ruusan, the Jedi and Sith clashed in 7 distinct battles over the course of 2 years. The war effort was completely miserable for both sides. Their resources were being completely tapped, and neither could gain an advantage over the other. The morale of both armies dipped dramatically as they dug into trench warfare. The sheer amount of death and conflict devastated the landscape of Ruusan and drove the Force-sensitive wildlife insane. The Jedi death toll caused them to dip into the reserves of the younger and even younger Jedi, ultimately leading to them giving Padawans quick wartime training and then shipping them straight to the front lines of the new Sith Wars. As the Sith attempted with futility to inspire hope in their troops, and the Jedi sent children into a meat grinder, the lines between light and dark began to blur. It was from this chaos that a new Sith Lord would arise, one calling himself Darth Bane. Using his manipulations, Bane sabotaged the 7th Battle of Ruusan, allowing Jedi reinforcements to slip through the Sith blockade. This was to force the mentally unstable Lord Khan into using a dangerous ritual known as the Thought Bomb. Bane promised that it would put an end to all of their enemies, but when all of the Sith Lords convened in a cave to perform the ritual, Bane ran as far away as he could. Hoth took 99 Jedi volunteers into the cavern to put a stop to the Thought Bomb. But when Lord Hoth got down there, Lord Khan detonated the ritual, causing a blast that eradicated all life in the radius. This permanently changed Ruusan's weather and altered its landscape, decimating the once lush world and making it into a barren wasteland. It was from this cataclysmic event that the much-needed change in the galaxy would begin to take shape. In the aftermath of any volcanic eruption, life finds a way to repopulate itself after the slate is wiped clean, and mirroring this phenomenon of nature, the 7th Battle of Ruusan marked the point where both the Jedi and Sith underwent evolutions. While Darth Bane went underground to begin the Rule of Two, the Jedi began to make drastic changes of their own. The Jedi no longer had a favorable public opinion. They were seen as war-hungry tyrants and belligerent, no different in many circles than the Sith. Some were even terrified that the Army of Light would go on a conquest of the Republic itself. It would require tons of work to return them to a place of good standing with the wider galaxy, and the single Jedi who rolled up their sleeves to do this work was the Jedi Master Fay Coven. What she saw was a need for the Jedi to return to their place as guardians, both publicly and internally. And when she was elevated to the highest rank in the Jedi Order, she cast aside her lightsaber when she took the mantle of the Grandmaster. As a diplomat and a Jedi consular, she refused to carry a lightsaber as a loud statement that she would not follow the warlike ways of the old Jedi. She was dedicated to peace, enforcing it only with weapons crafted with reason and negotiation. To amend public opinion of the Jedi, the Galactic Senate passed a bill known as the Ruusan Reformation. Among several other governmental ordinances, it called for the demilitarization of the Jedi, and the Army of Light was to heretofore be officially disbanded and never return. Fay Coven went further than just signing this. She ensured that the Jedi put away their battle armor and only donned humble tunics and robes. The title of Jedi Lord was also dissolved, and their private faction disassembled. But this is a topic for another holocron. Fay Coven did a lot of work to travel to various locations in the galaxy, displaying herself without a lightsaber and amending the public opinion of the Jedi. Within the Jedi itself, she made massive overhauls. The war had caused horrible inconsistencies with Jedi training. They were almost entirely combat focused, and few Jedi Padawans were getting the proper time and education on the Force. And so, this would spawn her greatest work, the handbook known as the Jedi Path. This is the first standardized handbook created for every member of the Jedi Order. Written in Basic, it outlined the explanation of the Jedi Code, everything of what it means to be a Jedi Knight. It taught students the structure of the Order, their history, and their mythos, along with what would be expected of them as they rose through the ranks as a Jedi Knight. Fay was the one who made it standard practice to wear the humble monk-like clothing and enforce it as a necessity for Jedi younglings. Jedi were allowed to customize their dress once they were Padawans, only if their master approved of it, and they had the liberty to dress as they pleased once they reached the rank of knighthood. But in her writings, Coven heavily encouraged all Jedi to maintain their simplistic uniforms. This would communicate peace and scholarly wisdom to the wider galaxy. Although her species only had a lifespan of around 70 years, it seemed that the Grandmaster sustained herself for a very long time. Yoda writes in the Jedi Path that he remembered Fay Coven during his time as a Jedi youngling. This places her death sometime after the year 896 BBY, so by the time Yoda interacted with her, she was 144 and still did not carry the weapon of the Jedi the entire time. Yoda writes that he remembers her very fondly, having an incredibly high respect for her, and from his annotation, it seems that he regularly goes back and rereads the Jedi Path, just so that he can hear the Grandmaster's voice written in her own words. Grandmaster Fay Coven is perhaps one of the most important Jedi in galactic history, someone who is often swept aside due to their lack of historical accounts, and let's face it, battlefield accolades. We often talk about the greatest warriors of the Jedi Order, the finest practitioners of the Force. Due to her lifespan, we can assume that Fay Coven was quite powerful in her own right, but we should remember her for her exceptional powers in peace and serenity. She embodied the Jedi Code to such a degree that she set the standard for it. It was because of her that the Jedi operate the way that we know them to operate, especially during the Clone Wars and during the Republic Classic era. Now, this is not to say that she's responsible for their blindness and dogma. They did that to themselves. But Coven was the one who organized them into an institution that could actually represent stability. The Jedi of an era between 1000 and 100 BBY were the reason that the Republic had entered a golden age. They ushered in a time of peace that they had never seen in the galaxy, and this is why they became arrogant and attached to political power that the Jedi had amassed. But putting all of that aside, they were still a strong and a peaceful body of protectors. And that all happened because one of them was willing to put her lightsaber away and to not wield it. Something I want to hit home is that the new Sith Wars was not simply a test of the Jedi Order. It fundamentally reshaped them. For 1,000 years, the Jedi were dragged into a conflict that was never clean, never noble, and never clear. This was not a single grand crusade against evil, but it was a fractured, grinding, generational war fought across forgotten worlds and ruined battlefields. The Sith did not stand as a unified empire. They were scattered, improvisational, and most importantly, desperate and wounded. And in response, the Jedi became the same. What emerged was not a Jedi Order of a contemplative guardian, but a force of generals, tacticians, and soldiers forced to survive in trenches, sieges, and endless attrition. The Jedi were no longer keepers of the peace. They were a military institution that wielded the Force. This transformation came at a cost. The longer the Sith Wars dragged on, the more brutal the Jedi became. Combat ceased to be a last resort and became a constant. Padawans were rushed through training, masters were measured by victories rather than wisdom, and the lightsaber, a symbol of restraint and responsibility, was a tool of death. The Jedi were no longer allowed time for patience. The Jedi did not fall to the dark side in a dramatic sense, but they drifted down that path pragmatically, almost unconsciously. By the time the war reached its end, they were no longer certain what they were supposed to be at all. It was in this exhausted, hardened order that Fay Coven stepped forward as the new Grandmaster. Her refusal to carry a lightsaber was not a symbolic gesture alone. It was a declaration of rupture. By putting the weapon away entirely, she drew a line between the eras. The new Sith Wars had forged the Jedi who believed stability could only be enforced through readiness for violence. But Fay rejected that premise. Her choice said that the war was over, not just politically, but spiritually, that the Jedi could heal. If the Order was to survive in any meaningful way, it had to relearn restraint and create an identity beyond conflict. Ironically, this course correction would one day contribute to many new failures. The dogma that crystallized after Fay's reforms would eventually alienate Anakin and blind the Jedi Order to the rise of Sidious. But that is a lot of blame to place squarely on Fay Coven's shoulders. That does not make her decision wrong, it made it necessary. Fay Coven did not act with the benefit of hindsight. She acted to save the Jedi that had lost themselves after 1,000 years of blood and mud. And while Star Wars often measures greatness in terms of power, unleashed on enemies or destroyed, Fay Coven stands apart. She shaped the galaxy not through devastation, but through refusal. Her influence came not from the lightsaber that she wielded, but from the one that she set down. So my friends, what do you think about this? Do you think that there should be more recognition for Jedi Grandmasters like Fay Coven, the ones who understand the Jedi Code on a deeper, transcendent level? Do you think there was something that perhaps should have been done differently to prevent what happened to the Jedi during the Clone Wars? Something that Fay missed? And if you would like to see more videos about the time of the new Sith Wars and rare and obscure Jedi, then reach out and crush that subscribe button. It is your destiny. As always, may the Force be with you wherever your path takes you next, and have a phenomenal day.